Warden of the Galactic Detainment Facility, Azura, stalked the cold corridors of his domain. His multifaceted eyes scanned the rows of cells, each housing a different conquered species from across the galaxy. Today was the day of the biannual count, a routine inspection to ensure no one had escaped their fate. He paused in front of the cell designated for the humans. Empty. A growl of frustration escaped his reptilian throat. "One species is not here," he hissed. A nearby guard, a hulking being with 4 arms and a face of tentacles, trembled. "The humans, sir. They don't surrender." Azura's eyes narrowed. "Then we will see why." Determined to make an example of them, Azura ordered a search party to find and capture the humans. His forces spread out, combing through the surrounding areas, but Ken Morgan and his group had anticipated this. They had created a network of hidden tunnels and bases, using their small size to their advantage. Ken, a former military strategist, had always been driven by a sense of duty and justice. His family had been taken by the aliens during the initial invasion, fueling his resolve to fight back. Flashbacks revealed his background, highlighting the sacrifices he had made and the people he had lost. Azura's frustration grew as his search yielded no results. Ken and his team had gone underground, literally. The humans had adapted to their harsh circumstances, using their resourcefulness and ingenuity to survive. They held strategic planning sessions, preparing for the day they would strike back. Tension built as Azura's forces closed in on the human hideout. Azura received unexpected help from a traitor within the human ranks. This traitor provided Azura with information about the human resistance's main base, setting the stage for a major confrontation. Ken and his team were ready for Azura's assault. Using guerrilla tactics and traps, they managed to hold off the invaders despite being vastly outnumbered. Amidst the chaos, Ken found himself face to face with the traitor, who turned out to be an old friend. This personal betrayal added emotional depth and complexity to the conflict. Ken outmaneuvered Azura by triggering a series of explosions that collapsed part of the facility, cutting off the alien reinforcements. The humans escaped through their tunnels, sustaining minimal casualties. Just when victory seemed assured, Ken discovered that Azura had captured a small group of human civilians, including children, as hostages. Azura demanded Ken's surrender in exchange for their lives. Ken faced a moral dilemma. He knew that surrendering would mean the end of their resistance, but he could not abandon the hostages. Azura set a deadline for Ken's decision. Ken's leadership was put to the ultimate test. He reflected on his journey, the sacrifices made, and the responsibility he carried. His resolve was strengthened by the support of his team and the civilians they had saved. In a daring and unexpected move, Ken orchestrated a rescue mission. Using their intimate knowledge of the facility's layout, the humans infiltrated Azura's stronghold. In a tense and thrilling sequence, they freed the hostages and confronted Azura. The final confrontation between Ken and Azura was intense but not graphically violent. Ken used his wits and strategic skills to outmaneuver Azura, who underestimated the human spirit. The humans managed to escape, leaving Azura's facility in ruins. The story ended on a hopeful note, with Ken and his people finding a new, hidden refuge where they could continue their fight for freedom. Ken Morgan sat in the dimly lit cavern, surrounded by his team. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the sound of quiet murmurs as they reviewed their plans. The humans had created an elaborate network of tunnels and hideouts beneath the planet's surface, a testament to their resourcefulness and determination. "We need to move quickly," Ken said, his voice steady but urgent. "Azura's forces are getting closer every day. We can't afford to be discovered now." His team consisted of a diverse group of individuals, each with their own unique skills. Alice, a brilliant engineer, was working on a device that would disrupt the aliens' communication systems. Marcus, a former pilot, had been mapping the tunnels to ensure they could navigate them quickly and efficiently. Emma, a medic, was tending to a wounded comrade, her hands moving with practiced precision. As they discussed their next steps, Ken's thoughts drifted to his family. The memory of their capture still haunted him, driving him to fight for the freedom of his people. He had vowed never to let the aliens win, and he intended to keep that promise. Outside the cavern, Azura's forces scoured the landscape. The search parties, led by Azura himself, were relentless. Azura's frustration grew with each passing day, his determination to capture the humans intensifying. The traitor within the human ranks had provided valuable information, and Azura was confident that victory was within his grasp. Ken knew they had little time. The traitor's betrayal had put them all at risk, and they needed to act fast. He gathered his team and outlined their plan. They would launch a surprise attack on Azura's main base, using the element of surprise to their advantage. The goal was to disable the aliens' communication systems and buy themselves more time. The team moved swiftly through the tunnels, their movements synchronized and silent. Ken led the way, his senses alert for any signs of danger. They emerged near Azura's base, hidden in the shadows as they observed the alien guards patrolling the perimeter. Alice set up her device, carefully calibrating it to disrupt the aliens' communications. Marcus and Emma kept watch, their eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. The tension was palpable, but they remained focused on their mission. "Almost there," Alice whispered, her fingers flying over the controls. "Just a few more seconds." Ken glanced at his team, feeling a surge of pride. They had come a long way since the invasion, and their resilience was inspiring. He knew that they would do whatever it took to protect their people and secure their freedom. The device activated, and the air was filled with a high-pitched hum. The alien guards reacted immediately, their confusion evident as their communication systems failed. Ken gave the signal, and the team sprang into action. They moved with precision and speed, disabling the guards and infiltrating the base. The element of surprise worked in their favor, and they quickly reached the main control room. Alice hacked into the system, shutting down the base's defenses and opening the way for their escape. As they made their way back to the tunnels, Ken couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His instincts had kept him alive this long, and he trusted them implicitly. He motioned for the team to halt, listening intently to the sounds around them. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook, and the tunnel walls began to collapse. Azura had anticipated their move and set a trap. Ken's heart pounded as he barked orders, guiding his team to safety through the crumbling passageways. They emerged into a large cavern, panting and covered in dust. Azura's voice echoed through the chamber, mocking and triumphant. "Did you really think you could outsmart me, humans? Surrender now, and I might spare your lives." Ken's eyes narrowed, his resolve hardening. He knew that surrender was not an option. He turned to his team, their faces grim but determined. "We're not giving up," he said firmly. "We've come too far to let them win now. We need to find another way out and regroup." They moved quickly, navigating the labyrinthine tunnels with a sense of urgency. Azura's forces were closing in, and they needed to stay one step ahead. Ken led the way, his mind racing with possible escape routes and strategies. As they reached a fork in the tunnels, Ken paused, weighing their options. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, and he made a quick decision. "Follow me," he said, taking the left path. "We can lose them in the maze of tunnels ahead." The team followed without hesitation, their trust in Ken unwavering. The tunnels twisted and turned, creating a complex network that confused even the most experienced navigators. Ken hoped it would be enough to throw off their pursuers. They finally reached a hidden exit, concealed behind a thick curtain of vines. Ken pushed through, leading his team into the dense forest beyond. They had escaped the immediate danger, but he knew their fight was far from over. Ken turned to his team, determination etched on his face. "We'll keep moving and find a new base. This isn't the end." The team agreed, their resolve matching his. Together, they would continue to fight for their freedom, no matter the cost. As the sun set behind the jagged mountains, Ken Morgan and his team huddled around a small fire in their new hideout, a secluded cave deep within the forest. The escape from Azura's trap had been harrowing, but they had managed to evade capture for now. Ken's mind churned with thoughts of their next move. "We need to strike back," Ken said, his gaze intense as he addressed his team. But we have to be smarter this time. Azura knows our tactics, and we need a new strategy. Alice, the team's engineer, was the first to speak. I've been working on an idea, she said, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. We could create a decoy signal to divert their forces. It won't give us much time, but it could be enough to launch a surprise attack. Marcus, the former pilot, agreed thoughtfully. It's risky, but it might just work. We need to hit them where it hurts, and fast. Emma, tending to a minor injury on her arm, looked up and added, We should gather more intelligence first. We need to know their weaknesses and plan accordingly. Ken agreed. You're right, Emma. We can't afford to rush in blindly. Let's divide our efforts. Alice, you work on the decoy signal. Marcus, scout the area and find out what we're up against. Emma, see if you can get in touch with our allies. We need all the help we can get. The team dispersed to their tasks, each member focused on their role. Ken watched them go, feeling a mix of pride and anxiety. They had been through so much together, and he knew that their strength lay in their unity. As night fell, the forest around them seemed to come alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. Ken sat alone by the fire, deep in thought. He couldn't shake the memory of his family's capture. It fueled his resolve, reminding him of why they fought. A rustle in the bushes snapped him out of his reverie. He tensed, reaching for his weapon, but relaxed when he saw it was Marcus returning from his scouting mission. We've got a problem, Marcus said, his voice low. Azura's forces are closer than we thought. They've set up a temporary base just a few miles from here. They're preparing for something big. Ken's jaw tightened. Then we don't have much time. We need to act before they launch their next offensive. The team gathered once more, the urgency of the situation clear. Alice had completed the decoy signal, and Emma had made contact with a nearby resistance group willing to assist them. They laid out their plan, each detail carefully considered. As dawn broke, the team moved swiftly through the forest, their steps silent and precise. They reached a vantage point overlooking Azura's base. The sight of the alien soldiers, moving with mechanical precision, sent a shiver down Ken's spine. Alice activated the decoy signal, and they watched as confusion spread among the enemy ranks. Alien soldiers scrambled to respond to the perceived threat, leaving their base vulnerable. It was the opening they needed. Ken led the charge, his team following closely behind. They moved with the efficiency born of countless battles, disabling guards and sabotaging equipment. Azura's forces were caught off guard, their defense faltering under the unexpected assault. They reached the heart of the base, where Azura himself awaited. His alien form was imposing, his eyes filled with a cold intelligence. Ken squared his shoulders, ready for the confrontation. Humans, Azura sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. You think you can defeat me? Your resistance is futile. Ken stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. We've come too far to back down now. You won't win. The battle that ensued was fierce. Azura's strength and cunning were formidable, but Ken and his team fought with a determination born of desperation and hope. They matched Azura's every move, their teamwork and tenacity pushing them forward. In a final, decisive blow, Ken managed to disable Azura's control device, rendering him vulnerable. The alien staggered, his mechanical enhancements failing. You may have won this round, Azura hissed, retreating. But this is far from over. As Azura fled, Ken knew they had bought themselves some time. The base was in disarray, and Azura's forces were scattered. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The team regrouped, their exhaustion evident but their spirits high. They had struck a blow against their enemy and proven that they could fight back. But Ken knew that the war was far from over. We've got a chance now, he said, looking at his team. Let's use it wisely. We need to regroup, plan our next move, and keep fighting. Together, we can win this. With renewed determination, they set off into the forest, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The forest was still, the only sounds being the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Ken Morgan led his team through the dense underbrush, their steps carefully measured to avoid alerting any hidden threats. They had left Azura's devastated base behind, but danger was always close at hand. Ken glanced back at his team. Alice was at his side, her face set in a determined expression. Marcus followed, his keen eyes scanning their surroundings for any signs of trouble. Emma brought up the rear, her medical kit at the ready in case of any emergencies. They were a tight-knit group, each member crucial to their survival and success. "We need to find a safe place to rest," Ken said quietly. "We've been pushing hard, and we can't afford to be caught off guard." Marcus agreed, pointing to a rocky outcrop in the distance. "There's a cave over there. It looks defensible and should provide some shelter." The team moved towards the cave, their exhaustion evident in their slow, deliberate movements. They reached the entrance and carefully checked it for any signs of danger before entering. Inside, the cave was cool and dry, offering a welcome respite from the outside world. As they settled in, Alice began setting up their communication equipment, hoping to establish contact with any nearby allies. Marcus started a small fire, its warmth and light bringing some comfort to the weary group. Emma checked on each team member, ensuring that their injuries were treated and their spirits bolstered. Ken sat by the fire, his mind racing with thoughts of their next move. Azura's forces had been dealt a significant blow, but they were far from defeated. They needed a new plan, one that would exploit the enemy's weaknesses and turn the tide of the war. Alice's voice broke the silence. "I've managed to reach one of our allied resistance groups. They're not far from here and are willing to provide support. We need to meet them at a rendezvous point in 2 days." Ken agreed, feeling a spark of hope. "Good work, Alice. We'll rest here for the night and head out at first light. We need all the help we can get." As the fire crackled softly, the team took turns keeping watch. Despite the looming threat, there was a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose among them. They knew that they were fighting for something greater than themselves, and that knowledge gave them strength. The next morning, they set out towards the rendezvous point. The journey was arduous, the terrain challenging, but they pressed on with unwavering resolve. Along the way, they encountered signs of Azura's presence, scorched earth, damaged trees, and the occasional patrol. They avoided confrontation whenever possible, knowing that their primary objective was to reach their allies. By the time they arrived at the rendezvous point, they were exhausted but relieved. A small group of resistance fighters greeted them, their faces lighting up at the sight of reinforcements. Among them was Commander Harris, a seasoned leader who had been fighting Azura's forces for years. "Ken Morgan," Harris said, extending a hand. "We've heard a lot about you and your team. It's an honor to finally meet you." "The honor is ours, Commander," Ken replied, shaking Harris's hand. "We're here to help in any way we can." Harris led them to a hidden encampment, where they were introduced to the rest of the resistance fighters. Plans were quickly made, strategies discussed, and resources shared. It was clear that the resistance was a formidable force, and Ken felt a renewed sense of determination. As the day turned into night, the combined forces prepared for their next mission. They were to launch a coordinated attack on one of Azura's key supply lines, a move that would cripple their enemy's operations and give the resistance a much-needed advantage. The night before the attack, Ken gathered his team. "We've come a long way, and we've faced countless challenges. But we're not alone anymore. We have allies, and together, we're stronger. Let's show Azura that we won't back down. Let's make this count." The team spent the night in quiet anticipation, each member mentally preparing for the battle ahead. The air was thick with a sense of purpose, a collective resolve to fight for their freedom and for the future of humanity. At dawn, they moved out, their steps silent and purposeful. They reached the target area, the supply line stretching before them like a lifeline for the enemy. Ken gave the signal, and the attack commenced with precision and ferocity. Explosions rocked the supply line, and Azura's forces scrambled to respond. The resistance fighters moved with practiced efficiency, taking out key targets and disrupting the enemy's operations. Ken and his team fought alongside their new allies, their combined efforts creating a devastating impact. As the battle raged on, Ken caught sight of Azura himself, directing his troops from a vantage point. Without hesitation, Ken charged towards him, determination burning in his eyes. Azura turned, his expression one of surprise and anger. "You again?" Azura growled. "You won't win this time." Ken's response was a fierce strike, their clash reverberating through the battlefield. They fought with everything they had, their movements a blur of skill and strategy. Azura was powerful, but Ken's resolve was unbreakable. In a final, decisive moment, Ken landed a blow that sent Azura sprawling. The alien leader staggered, clearly weakened. Ken stood over him, breathing heavily but victorious. "This isn't over," Azura hissed, retreating once more. "I will return." Ken watched as Azura fled, his heart pounding with the thrill of victory. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. He turned to his team, their faces filled with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. "We did it," he said, his voice firm. "But this is just the beginning. We need to stay strong, stay united, and keep fighting. Together, we can win this." As the resistance fighters regrouped and celebrated their hard-earned victory, Ken felt a sense of hope and determination like never before. They had struck a blow against their enemy, and with their newfound allies, they were ready to take the fight to Azura and reclaim their world.